healthcare, only the best should exist. So if you're not the best, you don't have a right to exist. I don't like equilibrium. I mean, we need to challenge the status quo. Innovation really needs to have a heartbeat. You should always be able to connect innovation to something bigger. Prosthetics isn't just about restoring a limb. I really think it's about restoring dignity. We see people at their worst. When they come to our clinics, a lot of times they've just lost their leg or have just had a spinal fracture. I saw people's resilience, how they would fall, get back up, keep going. That human spirit is essentially what drove me to get into the profession. It's about staying true to the purpose when the world tests you. The moment you stop growing, you start dying. It's all about momentum. Keep moving forward, stay curious, and don't rush the process.
Welcome to the very first episode of Momentum Reimagined with Amit Bhanti, where we explore stories of leadership, innovation, and the moments that redefine progress. Today, we're diving into the incredible journey of our host, a visionary leader, entrepreneur, and the driving force behind transformative healthcare solutions. Amit Bhanti is the CEO of Comprehensive Prosthetics and Orthotics and a trailblazer in the field of mobility solutions. So how excited are you to really get this podcast started today?
Hi, Leila. Hey, I'm super excited. Something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. We almost got started a little bit ago, but just life took over. There was so much going on. As they said, there's always a right time for something. So I think this must be that time. So super excited. Thank you.
Absolutely. No better time than the present, and things align the way they're supposed to. So I'm so glad that today's the first day, and there's going to be a lot more to come, but let's kick this off. Let's start episode 1.
I believe I'm in an episode of something, right? I mean, not like like a manic episode or something, or I'm not even a soap opera, but yeah, so
You're
excited.
the host. It's about you. So yeah, definitely excited. I've heard so much about you from feedback. So I'm curious. So take me back to your childhood. So was there a moment or an experience for you that planted the seeds for you to work in healthcare? Did it come from anything related to your family? Were they in healthcare at all?
Yeah, so actually, my father does exactly what I do. So my father is a prosthetist orthotist, just like I am. He himself, for his times, was probably a trailblazer, a leader in the industry in India. Founded one of the founding members of the national organization. So a big part of the global organization, which is known as ISPO. Big part of Red Cross leadership. So I kind of grew up around healthcare. My grandfather was a surgeon, so a lot of this kind of stuff was going on around me. But especially my father, as he was building, he was in private practice, also worked at the medical college. So the clinical services, a practice aspect, as well as teaching and nurturing and all of that, was a big part of my life. So yes, I grew up around healthcare.
Okay, awesome. So definitely you learned a lot even before taking this on yourself. So, and I know you mentioned you made your way from India to America. So that's a big journey. That's definitely no small feat. So how did that move shape you and your perspective, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, no, good question. But before I go there, right? I mean, something that I wanted to kind of mention before we move forward is, 30 years ago, right? When I was growing up, my father was in prosthetics and orthotics, doing exactly the same thing that I do, but in different kind of setting, right? I didn't grow up around fancy hospitals or technology. Most stuff was done by hand. But what I really saw, especially in India at that time, I saw people's resilience, right? I mean, firsthand, right? I had like real view of that. How they would fall, get back up, keep going. I think that's what that human spirit is essentially what drove me to kind of get into the profession. So I went to prosthetic orthotic school in India. Uh, right? And then I came to the United States for my master's. Right, so I don't think coming to the U.S. was just a move, right? I think it was a mindset reset, in my opinion. Right, when I came here, I saw healthcare very differently. Obviously, not just in terms of how shiny it was or how, I remember some of my teachers at Northwestern, like Brian Malis and some others, who were just phenomenal not just people, but clinicians, but above all, teachers who really shaped and transformed lives of people like me who came from a different mindset and then came here and really learned very differently. So I think it wasn't about what's possible for me, right? I think I've always been a person for who it's always been about what's needed, right? Um, and that's when I realized that innovation really needs to have a heartbeat. You should always be able to connect innovation to something bigger, right? I mean, a lot of times, when I see a lot of research, and research is super important, but I'm always looking at, hey, how can you commercialize this research? And when I say commercialize, really what I mean is how can you take all of these studies and the research that has been done for the greater good, right? To help the mankind or humankind and make their lives better.
Absolutely. And then I feel like when you have that mission, it really shows in everything that you do, especially in healthcare. It's something super important to have that compassion as well.
Yeah, and healthcare, especially when you add that to um, disability side of healthcare, right? What I do, prosthetics and orthotics, we see people sometimes at their worst, right? When they come to our clinics, a lot of times they've just lost their leg or have just had a spinal fracture or, a stroke and things like that. So, my mentor, Don Gertson, who is still my best friend, my co-founder for CPO, he always said, I mean, you got to look at these people or your patients. You should be able to become their friends. You shouldn't be so big that you can't be their friend, right? And that always, stayed with me.
That's definitely, I feel like a really good way to look at it because these people, like you said, are just went through probably a super traumatic experience. So having that relationship with people, like being their friend and treating them like that, I'm sure is so impactful for them. It's something that they're gonna remember for the rest of their life. So having that genuine connection is so valuable for sure. And I know now you've been super successful, but success definitely is something that comes from, I think, moments of struggle. So, in your life, is there anything you can think of where you can really share a time early in your career where you faced a significant challenge and how you were able to navigate it?
Well, I think it's all about the fight, right? I mean, we all coming to a completely different country, right? I mean, when you make that move, it's like a leap of faith. Right. I think it's a little bit easier when you're coming to America, I would say, right? I'm not going to, some country I can't name any country like that. Most countries are beautiful in their own ways, but uh, coming to America, but it's still a struggle, right? I mean, I'm a very young, guy, left my parents behind. And, I was so used to a certain surrounding, certain way of doing things, always having resources because I had parents who, really helped me in every way possible, or even somebody to talk to, right? So, um, there were a lot of struggles, to tell you the truth. I mean, I was super excited. I did well at school. I had this big dream, the typical American dream that a lot of immigrants came to this country with. So all of that was there, but there would be like sleepless nights, right? I mean, not knowing whether my student visa would get converted into a work visa. Uh, should I get a job? Will I get a job or not? Right? I mean, had a very small budget to live. Will I be able to call my girlfriend then, who's my wife now, actually the pillar of my life? But I'll be able to call her or not, right? I mean, because we used to have calling cards. I remember today I can talk to anybody in the world, practically for free, right? And but at that time it was like $1 a minute, so I'd buy like a $5 cards from this part of Chicago. But I'd walk there, get out these two cards every week, so I could call my now wife, my girlfriend, then Charu, or my parents. So I mean, there were those struggles. There were struggles whether my week, whether I'll be able to live through the week for the money that I had or not. There were struggles where a lot of stuff would get lost in translation, right? I mean, or just understanding people, culture shock. I used to have a full time school, but then I was also working. to support myself in some ways, sometimes in places where really nobody wants to be, pumping gas and things like that. But you know what, it's all a part of that journey, if you will. I have always been that person. I always believe that, for you to get somewhere, right? I mean, if you're somewhere today, there've been so many people who have touched you along the way, some in good ways or not, but all of those different encounters shape your future, really. So yeah, there were a lot of struggles, but who cares, right? I mean, here we are. It's all water under the bridge, as Don would say.
Right? And those struggles really make you who you are. It gives you such a different perspective on things too. Like you said, working jobs that people don't often want to work, and having those struggles and those concerns. It also just, even in the work you do when you're connecting with different people, all those little experiences make you who you are, and probably in a way also create like empathy for those who, for example, are struggling at that point in their life too. So all those little struggles make you who you are. It's part of the journey for sure. But that is interesting to come, especially coming from another country and having to build yourself up and leaving everything you know. That's very courageous. I don't think a lot of people would be able to do that. So it's good for you that you came and you also had such success here. So
Thank you.
being that your parents, you said your dad and your grandfather were in this industry as well, but what inspired you to enter this world of prosthetics, and how did you go about really reimagining the way care is delivered?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Right. I mean, there's always that decision point. A lot of people uh, don't go into the professions that their parents were in. Like sometimes to an extent that, hey, I'm just not going to do medicine. I'm not going to be in healthcare, versus people like me who decide to go in the same profession as their parents, right? I really think my father has been a huge role model and inspiration, but also the fact, the people that they serve, or that we serve, are really the guiding force, right? I think prosthetics isn't just about restoring a limb, right, or part of a body, right? I really think it's about restoring dignity, of a person, independence, give their confidence back. So there's so much more to it, right? I mean, as they say, once an amputation happens or somebody goes through stroke or something like that, right? I mean, it's for most people, right? Some people are different, but for most people, it's really probably the worst they think has happened to them, right? So really, what we do, gives them a lot back, right? And I really think it's not us that are doing them. A lot of times they're the ones that are guiding us, and that's the way you can get the best rehab or rehabilitation done for people. But I guess that's what really I enjoyed when my father used to have these gratifying, moments, when patients would come and hug him, or our whole life revolved around. So my father is a prosthetist orthotist. My mom was a movie maker, and majority of the movies that she made were around social issues of India at that time, right? So her movies would be around, um, you know, um, AIDS awareness, or her, because AIDS was big at that time and it was going to be rampant in different parts of the world. India, with its um, socioeconomic situation where they were, with a lot of migrant laborers, who'd be in different parts of the country, leading to those issues. Or my mother would work on child labor, so she would make movies on that. She was well recognized. So the healthcare side of my father, right, and all of these different things that my mother was doing through Rotary, through Red Cross, through different organizations. Then eventually she started her own organization helping a lot of these people. I really grew up around a lot of very aware people, and I saw all of this very close. And I said, hey, you know what? If there's a space where compassion and innovation can coexist, why should I go anywhere else, right? And I had a great platform to launch from. That's my father.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's amazing that I'm sure when you started out and you were going through this process, like you said, your dad was such a good role model, but just being able to talk to someone who knows, everything about what you're going through to a certain degree. And that would probably be a really, I think, interesting experience too, to have that mentorship from someone. And then talking about mentorship and leadership, I know, your leadership has been pivotal in transforming comprehensive prosthetics and orthotics. So, internationally recognized organizations. So, how would you describe your leadership style and how has it evolved for you over the years?
Well, I mean, my leadership style really is all around, um, I really think, Don would used to say, you can't demand respect, you have to command respect, and you lead by example, right? I mean, that's kind of how it was built. So early on, it was all about me, um, working very hard so that people around me would see that, hey, this guy works really hard, right? So maybe that energy will get transferred into people around me, and then they would work hard and help build the practice, or carry the purpose forward, or really take care of those patients, right? At the end of the day, it's about really when you're a leader, you really have to be able to walk in the people that you're led, or people who you're working with, in their shoes, really see things from their side. Not all the time, right? Sometimes you have to make sure that you stay firm because you have conviction about something. But at the end of the day, it's about bringing people together, right? It's really bringing that positive energy that really makes people do things without having to be asked for it, right? And that's the kind of organization that I've always, I've always wanted to build, right? I mean, that's the kind of organization we have, with transparency, with honesty, with all these tenets that drive us, right? I mean, CPO's um, core philosophy drives around all of these things. Teamwork is super important. All of this really needs to be inculcated. People have to be given tools to do these things. And then they have to be recognized, right? When they make those right decisions, or when they do that right thing. So I think at the end of the day, the leadership style, in my opinion, I mean, it is something that's constantly evolving. I'm still learning on a day-to-day basis. So, there comes a point in your life when you stop learning, right? And I struggle with that. I talk about it all the time with people around me, like, hey, I feel like I'm not learning anything, right? Because I'm only always like uploading, I'm not downloading, right? You don't have time, right? You think you know everything, or most people look up to you and things like that. So there are those moments when you feel shit. Do I, uh, pardon my language, but do I need to go enroll in some courses, or how else can I learn? Do I have the right mentors still, right? And I've been very lucky with that, right? I mean, I had a great mentor in Don, who was my co-founder and partner. He retired a couple of years ago, but we're still best friends. We travel together. He still gives me these nuggets of wisdom that, keep driving me. I think my wife, I mean, she helps shape my leadership style. She brings in that human element. It's amazing. So my wife actually works for CPO also. And, she was actually our company's first president, and, one of the founders. And then she quit, she left for a while when we had our first kid. And then she stayed away for about 20 years. But recently she came back and she's done really well. But she brings that whole human element. She knows everything about it. We have a few hundred employees, right? I mean, and knowing so much about so many people doesn't happen by going in and prying information out. It's because people trust somebody, right? And their personal problems and how we can help. It's all been about that for us. So even if I'm not thinking about certain things, she'll always come and say, "Hey, you know what? Do we want to be a company where somebody's struggling and we're okay with that? I mean, if that's how you want to be." So it's having these people who can show the mirror. My kids, I mean, they're the perfect example, right? As a matter of fact, I was telling somebody, I learn a lot from my daughter, with how hardworking she is, with the way she looks at different things, and my son, who's my co-founder in another company called Hike Medical that we have started, and I learn things from him every day. I think he's going to be phenomenal at what he does. And as a matter of fact, even now. So I think leadership skills, or leadership, is evolving constantly. I think you should be vulnerable enough that if you make a mistake, you should be able to apologize and move forward, learn, and at least realize that, hey, you know what? You're not perfect.
Absolutely. No, that's amazing. I mean, great leadership is one so important, but it definitely can make or break the experience for employees. So I think just having that open mind mentality and that awareness, and like you said, having that human element can go so far, especially leading by example. I was just in a different scenario where it was the opposite and it can ruin your whole experience.
For me, it's just about energy transfer.
Mhm.
My job is to keep the team's energy aligned, make sure that even when I'm not in the room, the purpose still is. That's it. So,
Absolutely, for sure. And CPO has been at the forefront of integrating cutting edge technology like 3D printing and data driven care. So, can you share an example of the most innovative solution that you've introduced and maybe how that really changed the game for your organization or for your patients?
yeah, I think, yeah, it's always been about moving forward for us, right? We've always challenged, I always say, I don't like equilibrium, right? I mean, we need to challenge the status quo, right? If we, when somebody says, hey, this is how we've always done something, I mean, that's like, well, is this the best way to do something, right? I mean, oh, I had actually an employee of mine, kind of was a friend too. He always used to say, "You remember, right? When you stop growing, you start dying, right?" So think about that, right? I mean, everybody, the moment you stop growing, you start dying, right? So when you think about a company and its life cycle, right? I mean, we need to keep growing, we need to keep evolving. It's the life out there. I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, there's competitors, there's others, there's, especially in healthcare, there's reimbursement pressure, there's regulatory headwinds. There's so much that's there that can bring you down. It's very, very important for you to keep reimagining and keep, I don't want to say reinventing, but constant evolution is kind of the way to go. So, if you ask me, there have been so many things, right? Um, for a small practice that we were maybe 6, 7 years ago, we started looking at shared services, right, which was really not a very common thing in O&P. Some of the largest companies still did things at locations, right? And then we imagined that, hey, how could we take some ideas from other industries where they've created shared services division, and how you can scale a team, to maybe do things more efficiently, and how will that drive profitability for the company, thereby ensuring the company's success, right? So I mean, there's so many things like that. Insoles.ai, I mean, one of the biggest innovations that we've done. So essentially, we're a data-driven company. We love data. I'm a data guy to the extent that I need to be presented data. I'm not a guy who can create data, but if there's, if so, I have an amazing team. My analytics team is phenomenal, especially for our industry. So first thing we built that transformed the way we think, or we make our decisions, was um, really creating our data analytics structure, right? I mean, really building structured data, which is coming from all the different parts of the company, right? So a lot of people would look at EMR, right? Your electronic medical record system that they use, and um, most of the stuff would come out of there, right? But there's data happening all around us, right? I mean, when somebody's sending us a patient, there's like so many data points where, name of the patient, age of the patient, other demographic information of the patient, where did the patient come from, which hospital, right? What kind of insurance, what kind of plan, all of that, right? And then once the patient's seen, the whole evaluation of that patient and what are the different things that we're seeing. And we were not able to, really use that data to make our decisions, right? So we decided to really create a system where we could, um, how should I say this? Um, a business intelligence system, right? So that we can not just get the data, but do something with data so that we can make better decisions, right? So in the past, the way data worked was, it was mostly diagnostic, right? This happened last month. You had this revenue, these patients were there, this is what you did, and then you slice and dice it a month later. What can you do? with that information. Yes, it's good information. This is what you did. But then, uh, things started changing, right? Where, you started having prescriptive data, right? But data could be used in a way where you're able to slice and dice the data, have all the drill throughs to prescribe what you should do with that data, right? I mean, so as things are happening, you're getting um, insights from your data platforms, and then you go in and um, essentially, beginning of the day, you look at your data platform, see what are the 5 things that I must do, right? That becomes prescriptive. Now is a time when data should be automating things for you, right? Especially with AI, right? So, how can you build systems that are interconnected and aligned in a manner that a lot of times, a lot of simple tasks or even complex tasks, based on what your data and analytics is telling you, how can you automate those tasks so that we can ensure that we're able to make decisions more rapidly, right? Because it's patient care, right? I mean, it's these people that are waiting to be taken care of. And how can we reduce that cycle time? It's very long. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems that I see in my practice, and I know is a problem with majority of the practices, is how much time it takes for you to, bless you, bring a patient in, take the patient through the whole evaluation process. You have to do eligibility verification through the insurance companies, send for authorization, which takes forever. Then you are able to take care of it. It's just a vicious cycle. So if you can use data and build systems to ensure that you're able to take care of your patients quickly, I'm all for it. So that was huge for us, building a data-driven organization. We also, the Insoles.ai platform, as I was talking to you about, right? A lot of orthotic and prosthetic providers started getting away from that because Medicare diabetic shoes and inserts, which is part of the overall diabetic foot care program, part of Medicare shoe bill that happened a long time ago. um, it's a very difficult process. It's these people who have foot related problems and add diabetes on top of that makes them much more vulnerable to other comorbidities. They end up having calluses, ulcers, and a lot of time because of diabetes, they don't realize they have these problems, and they end up getting amputation. And we all know that a good percentage, 40 to 50% of those people who have an amputation die within first 5 years of the amputation, right? So, I mean, it's such a big problem, and sometimes we fail to address those problems. So we said, hey, you know what? Let's build something which is going to really, it's a high volume, low margin or low value service that that's the reality of it. That's why a lot of people want to get away from it. We saw an opportunity there. We said, hey, you know what? It's a high volume, right? So there's a lot of volume, there's a lot of patients. So how about we deploy some capital and build systems so that we can provide this piece or part of care more efficiently? So we built our own scanning platform, where we have made this care so accessible to anybody in the world. They get a link from us. Their camera turns into a scanner, right? And their phone camera, and we can use that to build 3D models. And now we build AI pipelines, so the whole modification aspect of that model happens automatically. We have one of the largest 3D printer farms in the country here in Peoria, Illinois. We're able to 3D print insoles of foot orthotics, that typically cost an arm and a leg, and no pun intended, at a cost which is very manageable. You know why? Because 77% of Americans have foot related problems. Add diabetes to that, it's a very, very bad issue. It's like a money pit. And a lot of these people don't make it to the care that they need or they deserve. And we needed to make sure that we have that ability. So thankfully, it's going really well. And so I think there's many things that we do. We do a lot of small experiments on a daily basis. Some have small scale impacts, some have really large scale impacts. But that's what we do.
That's definitely innovative. I didn't even know that that was something that was possible. So that is really, you definitely seem to always be forward thinking and, like you said, constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And beyond that, this podcast is called Momentum Reimagined. So
Hey, by the way, just before we move forward, if you have foot pain, just let me know. We'll send you those.
I will definitely let you know. I'm so curious. I definitely need to take a deep dive into it because I'm so curious about how that all works. Like
Awesome. Yeah.
for sure. And speaking about that, even going back to this podcast and being that it's called Momentum Reimagined. So what does momentum mean to you? So, and beyond what does it mean to you, but how do you sustain it during times of uncertainty or setbacks?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. So, as we were trying to name my podcast, right? I mean, I'm not a branding guy, right? I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't have an MBA. I really don't understand any of this, but I think Momentum Reimagined, really captures the spirit, of what we are building at CPO and Hike Medical, which is the foot orthotic company in Souls.ai, Hike Medical. It's really, not. It's really a movement where innovation, empathy, and technology come together to improve lives, right? So it's about rethinking what drives progress in healthcare, not just more speed or scale, but smarter, more human centered innovation, right? Really making sure that we're all thinking about that one person that's in the middle, that's our patients, right? So really, I think it's a podcast, which is which is a space to talk about those ideas and people behind them. So it doesn't just have to be me; it can be, other clinicians in my practice, right? I mean, that are solving complex musculoskeletal related problems on a day-to-day basis. It could be our referral sources, doctors, surgeons, that are out there taking care of patients. It could be suppliers or manufacturers that are innovating on a daily basis so that we can provide this care to our patients. So, and at the end of the day, I've always been a big believer, like I was telling you earlier, it's all about commercializing the idea, right? How can you take it to people? I'm a big believer of business. And maybe that's why um, uh, I really like the big idea, the big picture kind of thing. So I always want to take all of this back in my other episodes to business, right? Or profitability, or more efficiency, or scalability, all these different concepts that a lot of healthcare companies or practices struggle with on a day-to-day basis, especially in this environment of you know, regulatory headwinds, reimbursement pressure. There's an economic downturn sometimes, or it could be hard to find employees. There's always a way to sustain, right? So I think to your next question, I think it's all about the fight, right? I mean, when there's adversity, you got to keep fighting. Don used to say, they're all coming for you. The business that you're building today, they want you down. They're all, I don't think like that, essentially. I really think if you build something special, if you continue to work on it, if you continue to innovate, improve, there's a way to sustain, right? Um, so, but yeah, during times of adversity, think about COVID, right? I mean, when COVID happened, right? I mean, that's the best example for you, right? I really feel some people ask said, hey, COVID really destroyed a bunch of businesses or what have you, right? I really think all the businesses that came out of COVID, and I'm not trying to be like over proud or to whatever, but if we came out on the other side, that meant that we were different, right? That meant that maybe we worked harder. That meant maybe we had processes aligned, or we had our vision. People were aligned to the vision or the bigger purpose that the practice was there for, right? Um, I really think, especially in healthcare, only the best should exist. So if you're not the best, you don't have a right to exist. You really have to keep working so that the people who are trusting you with their care at their worst time are really taken care of the way they should be taken care of. So yeah, I mean, I can keep talking about it, but forever.
No, but I mean that passion is so important, and like you said, like especially the population that you're working with is going through some of the hardest times they've probably ever went through. So they deserve that experience with someone who is the best
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
can help them through that because it is traumatic. And I mean, it goes for healthcare overall, and obviously, healthcare is such a big industry, and not everyone is the best at it. And there's been, I'm sure everyone has had good and negative experiences in healthcare. So it is great to strive to be the best, especially with your population.
I think so. Just tying that COVID story back to Momentum Reimagined, right? I mean, the whole world slowed down during COVID, but we didn't stop moving, right? I mean, no, we were still moving. Momentum isn't about speed, really. It's about staying true to the purpose when the world tests you, right? It was the real testing period for the world. And I think uh, companies or practices or whoever came out on the other side um, really had what it takes to be there, right?
Absolutely. And having that drive, and also was such a crazy time that COVID was. It was such a shift in the world where healthcare was, shifting as well. It had
Amen.
to shift so much, so drastically, and so quickly too. So just having that experience of being able to thrive in an epidemic, it's a very unique and interesting experience for sure. And when it comes to your journey specifically, your journey really reflects constant evolution and progress. So, how do you define success today compared to when you first started?
Yeah. I think, in a very simple way, I think, success, like I think I was talking to somebody last night, right? I mean, how do you define success? I'm like, it's not easy to define, right? Early on, success meant growth, right? Having more locations, right? You go to different conferences, people kind of judge you based on, hey, how many clinics you got? Oh, I've got 8 now. Hey, things of that nature, right? More patience, right? I really think now success means impact for me, right? I mean, what kind of impact am I able to make on the lives of the people we serve, which is our patients, or impact we're able to make on the lives of people that are part of this mission, the employees and my teammates at CPO, or what kind of impact I'm able to make with other practices that are out there. Because, when you become a little bit um, successful, you have a responsibility, right? I really feel that it's that impact that I'm really going after, right? I mean, we're making care more human, more accessible, and more hopeful, in my opinion. So it's all about the impact now for me. I want to do things that can not just shape the future of my practice, but how can we redefine the success of the industry, orthotic and prosthetic industry, which is really, what I do or really I love, but also healthcare in general. So that's kind of where my head is. So that's how I would say I would define success early on versus now.
Absolutely. And again, even that's your perception of, or your ideas behind, um, that is something that's also constantly evolving and changing. And success to you now may be something that looks different next year and 5 years. So that's also something that's always growing and changing as well, I'm sure.
Yep, absolutely.
And speaking about going forward, let's think about, going back for a second. So if you could go back
No.
in time, what advice would you give your younger self about leadership and innovation, or just life in general?
Well, when you're young, right? I mean, which is great, which is really important, really, right? That we feel like we can, we don't have the baggage that people sometimes end up having later on in life. We have this drive. You're strong. You're healthy. All of that stuff, right? But what sometimes that does is that it makes people rush the process, right? I mean, so talent is one thing, but experience really makes it powerful, right? I mean, so don't rush the process. Go through the process. Like one of my mentors always say, hey, trust the process. It's been proven before, right? So don't rush the process. You don't have to have it all figured out, right? I always thought like, hey, I know all this, and tomorrow I'll have this done, right? And then a month later, I'm thinking that, hey, you know what? Tomorrow I'll have it done, right? But it's just because I feel like everything can be done with a, like whatever, like click of a button or snap of a finger and things of that nature, right? I say just stay curious, stay kind, and stay in motion. Keep doing it, stay disciplined. But really, for me, it's all about the motion, right? And yeah, so that's what I would tell the younger me. I always wanted to just have everything, be everywhere, be at every conference, it was ridiculous. And that might have had some some things that maybe when I reflect now, like time at home, right, and doing things around your parents, around your kids, and things like that. But I am not a person who repents. I really believe in moving forward, right? And I it's all about momentum. Keep moving forward. So yeah, I would tell myself to maybe look at things a little bit differently. Stay curious and don't rush the process.
I love that. That's just a good, I think, life model. Be curious, stay curious, be kind, keep moving. I love that. That's a very, very good way to
Water
go.
under the bridge, like Don said.
There you go.
Something happened is done. Forget about it. Move forward.
Exactly.
That's all.
So, and so for our listeners, what would you say that they can expect from Momentum Reimagined? And what do you hope that they take away from today's conversation?
Well, yeah. I think why I started thinking about this podcast, right? Because I found that a lot of us are constantly trying to be perfect, right? And constantly trying to achieve it all and things like, which is great. I mean, that's all about ambition and things like that. But I wanted to do it a little bit differently, so I want to tackle a lot of problems. So it's this podcast is not about perfection, right? It's about people, the leaders, the dreamers, the doers, right? Who keep moving, even when the path isn't clear, right? I mean, so many times, like, I'll give you a quick example. We got an opportunity um, recently to have a part of our business in California. We're in the Midwest, in the 4 states, most of our clinics. And an opportunity came up, and I somehow, for whatever reason, mostly it was to help the people that were there because they were going to go through some kind of adversity. And I jumped at it. I ended up there, not knowing where it was going. A friend of mine called me, who's also been a mentor of mine for a long time, and jumped on the plane, ended up in California the next day. And now it's become a pretty large business within the 6 months, right? We didn't know which way we were headed. We did not know what the process was going to be. We did not know all the problems that existed. We did not know, how we're going to build it, right? But then we wanted to keep moving forward, even when the path wasn't clear, right? And I would commend my team that backed me up, just because I said, "Hey, I see an opportunity there," right? So I really, really want to dedicate this or make this podcast about the dreamers, the doers, and the leaders who are out there doing great things, right? We're going to talk about innovation in this podcast, leadership, failure, right? Failure is the key. I mean, I'm telling you, a lot of people, when they fail at something, they think it's all doom and gloom. I think failure is sometimes the best learning moment for you. I'll give you an example. Again, I used to be a tennis player in my state growing up early on, sub junior circuit. And I lost this game. And I think it was a semifinal game. Lost this game to this guy that I just did not like. I mean, there was no way I was going to lose to that guy, right? And the guy was super happy. And when I came home, right, my father said, "Well, why are you so upset?" And I'm like, "Well, I lost this game." He's like, "Well, at least you look at it differently. You made somebody's day. The guy is super happy. If you hadn't lost." And now sometimes when I think about it, I think that somebody would say, "Hey, what kind of loser mindset was your father instilling?" Right? And but that wasn't the case, right? One, maybe he was trying to buck up a young child who was very unhappy that day. But I really, really feel that the disappointment aspect and the ability to deal with that disappointment is so important. So I sometimes don't celebrate big wins that my kids have, but when they are disappointed with something, I want to make sure they understand why, and they're able to deal with it, because world is not going to live on your act on your terms, right? I mean, and we should have the ability to deal with that. So we're going to talk about innovation, leadership, failure, but the most important thing for me is food. So I want to talk about food. All my friends depend. I don't say depend on me, but they love it whenever we out somewhere traveling and all that. they love my recommendation of restaurants. They say, hey, you can call Amit about any city in the world and tell you where to go, what to do, where to eat. I want to talk about food and everything in between, right? I mean, family, anything that you're struggling with. So really, it's because life is, momentum. Life's momentum is made of all of this, everything that you're doing, right? So, yeah, so I want to talk about all these different things and have a lot of fun doing this.
Absolutely. No, and I think what you said is so, so valid in terms of like failure. You learn so much from a failure experience, more so sometimes than even a big win. It's such a key learning experience, and it's not always a setback. Sometimes it redirects you into a whole new path. There's so much value in failure.
Blessing in disguise. I was fired from my first job in a foreign country for, I think, no fault of mine. I thought my life was over. But I think that was the biggest blessing in disguise that I met my later co founder, who was my boss in the next job. That next job was in a very large prosthetic orthotic practice. I think was my best job before I became an entrepreneur. If I hadn't been fired from that job, um, life would have been very different. So yeah, failure, disappointment, super key. And I think I'm not saying you fail every day, but huge learning experience.
Absolutely. And again, I think you touched on this earlier, but it builds so much resilience. And resilience is so important in all areas and walks of life, but especially as a business owner too, or as an entrepreneur. You have to be able to have that resilience to keep going and not let it set you back
Yep.
mentally. So for
It
sure.
move you forward.
Exactly. Keep moving forward.
Yep.
So thank you so much, Amit,
Yeah.
for sharing your incredible journey and for setting the stage for what's to come on this podcast. I know I'm super excited. I know it's specific to your industry. However, I think that a lot of what you're talking about goes beyond that, and it really is valuable, and I feel very motivated. So thank you for that. I'm sure our listeners feel motivated too, but for our listeners who are listening, just know that this is just the beginning of Momentum Reimagined, and we'll be exploring more stories of leadership, of innovation, and of impact. So we invite you to join us as we reimagine what's possible. See you on the next episode. Thank you so much, Amit.
Thank you.